Item 1, call to order.
Miller.
Here.
Birkenbaugh.
Here.
Wittrock.
Present.
Item 2, recognition of guests. I think we've got too many guests to go through, so just make sure that you sign the sign-in sheet, everybody, and Jeannie will collect those. Do you want to go ahead and move this up here, or do consent agenda?
Let's just do that.
Do consent agenda? Yeah. Okay. Item 3, consent agenda. 3A, approve or disapprove minutes for regular meeting held August 14th, 2024, and agenda for September 18th, 2024.
I so move.
I'll second that.
Miller.
Yes.
Birkenbaugh.
Yes.
Wittrock.
Yes.
Just now. Okay, and we're gonna go ahead and skip to item 5C, approve or disapprove fiscal year 24-25 budget for Kingfisher Schools. Comment?
I think that's why
Yes.
everybody's here. I appreciate everybody for coming. It's nice to see a crowd. I believe it's would be premature to discuss Kingfisher's budget today because the budget process is this. The school approves the budget. The school then publishes their budget, and then the excise board will certify their budget. It has to be published, and it hasn't been published yet. It may be in the paper today. Michael would know. But once it's published, then the taxpayers have a right to protest that budget. And so I would say any discussion we have now might be premature of that. So we will probably, my recommendation would be that the excise board reschedule the meeting, and that will give every taxpayer a chance to protest the budget. And the best way of probably doing that would be write a letter to the county clerk and tell what your protest is. I believe the intention of the excise board will then be to ask the school board some questions. And so if you have a question about an expenditure that they've had, send it in with detail, and we will send that to the school board and get an answer. So that when we meet next, we will be better to address their budget. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'd like to say something. Those of us who have been attending these school board meetings waiting to hear about this tax and what we might be saddled with, we've had the can kicked down the road so many times, waiting to see if we can do this or do that. That's why all these people are here, because it just feels like we've been waiting. And I understand what you're saying, but if we do reschedule it, or if you guys do decide to reschedule, if you could do it at a time where more people could attend, if you're truly looking for input, or not just letters, because I think letters oftentimes are just a passive way of not saying much or not receiving much. That's just my opinion. But there's a lot of people here who want to be heard and seen, and we feel like we haven't been seen. And so, by what's been happening at the other meetings. So.
I agree.
I will tell you that this board has been proactive. We've been.
Oh, I'm not talking about that.
We've been talking about this for a year.
Mm-hmm.
The excise board actually went to the school board and told them, we have a solution for your problem. If you really want to pay this, we've got a solution. They've written multiple letters to state senators, but each time they asked the wrong question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is illegal to transfer money. We were not asking them to transfer money. We were saying, all you gotta do is lower your general fund budget by
Right.
the exact amount you.
Right.
And then it will be, and I would almost tell you, I can't guarantee it, I'm not on the excise board, but the basic feeling of the excise board that has been expressed to the school board is we will cut your budget.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not gonna tell you what's gonna be done, but I don't think they're gonna get their budget passed, so.
Okay. Well, and I agree. I mean, everybody here, I don't think anybody's beef is with anybody in this room. We just want to not have the can kicked down the road again, where we feel like we're not being heard as taxpayers.
Well, an appropriate time for proper representation.
Correct.
And I should say, the statute set up the deal. You can protest it. And then after the excise board certifies and files their budget, you have another 15-day protest that's available with the state. And you can write that protest to the state auditor or the county clerk.
When do you need to receive, if we're gonna try to reschedule for the 25th, when do you need to receive comments?
Anytime before then, I mean.
But like, if we're gonna send it to the school board, is,
Oh,
you know, do you need it like by the 23rd?
Well, I'd say
Right, the same.
need to have it in the
next week.
next 2 days,
Yeah,
probably.
next couple of days if we're gonna give it to the school.
I mean, if you have a specific question about an expenditure, that's what we're thinking is that we're gonna send them a list of questions on, gosh, I'm trying to figure out a nice way to say it.
Go for
These
it.
questions have to be put on the agenda, they have to be an agenda item.
So can you make it clear that the taxpayers need to review the school's budget? And where do they get that so that they can review it to make their protest against the budget?
Actually, okay, and I will give you some, I don't know, I can give you some numbers, but it's like, a normal, and I like to call these max budget. The max budget for a Kingfisher School District on their general fund is 36.04 mils, okay? It's hard to talk about that in a context because we have a levy sheet, and the levy sheet includes, if you're a taxpayer of Kingfisher County, you pay taxes of the county, you pay a 4 mil levy, you pay an ambulance district levy, you pay a school district levy, you pay a VOTEC levy. Yes, there's the levy sheet, and it adds to, last year it added to 85 mils. The school is, with the school budget that's been submitted, that will go from 85 mils to 100, and I'm 100.17 or something, 19. That's a 17% increase. I would tell you the excise board was discussing making it, I almost call it revenue neutral, but the sinking fund does actually go up, even though it's revenue neutral because of some changes in valuation, and some interest earnings. But that one went up 2%. Now, then there's what I would call a minimum budget, which is if the excise board were to pass the minimum allowed by statute, that millage would be 20.59, and that would actually decrease the taxpayer's burden by 0.05%. I mean, it's pretty small. But anyway, those are the choices. There's a minimum and a maximum, and the excise board, in my opinion, has the power to do anything in between.
So John, you said this, I don't know who, you said we gave the school options or just gave them.
The excise board met with Mr. Glover, Brad Whitrock, and Charles Walker, and basically said, here we think is a solution for your problem. Why don't you just not ask for the max? Then they consulted everybody they can, I guess, and said, we can't do that. It's illegal. But what they actually were asking was, can we transfer money to the sinking fund? And you're not allowed to transfer money from the general fund to the sinking fund. But you are allowed to not ask for as much as, you're allowed not to ask for the max. It's basically, here's our list of needs. All you have to do is
But
reduce your
they
needs.
did have this information.
Yes.
It was provided.
In June.
Many
And the reason,
times.
the reason that was given,
February.
we had heard, you read through the paper, Michael, that the school wanted to pay it they wanted to pay it out of their own money. They just couldn't find a way to do it. It's like, well, here is a way, and we offered that as a solution. And I don't know how everybody else was shocked. I was shocked when they left that meeting, and the next meeting it was like basically voted to do the opposite. Anyway, and they were talking about in June they were talking about writing a check for $1.25 million to pay on the bonds. That wouldn't have solved anything. You would have still had a judgment. The judgment wouldn't have been for as much, but you still would have had a judgment. So anyway.
Will the budget be in the paper?
The budget will not be in the paper. There's a publication sheet that's a condensed portion that basically says, here's the amount we need to raise by taxes. And that's what you're protesting, is that they don't need that much.
It's called estimate of needs is what
We call it a budget. It's called the estimate of needs. It's called, it used to be called the saddle blanket, but it's like, it'll be in there. But there's a publication sheet, but it's only this big, and it only gives you like very general numbers. It's not going to tell you how much they sent for instruction. The real budget will have those numbers lined out.
But public record, so they can
Oh, yeah,
request that from
yeah,
the
yes.
school
Yeah.
at
But
any
it-
time, right? Yeah.
Well, and the county will have 3 copies,
Okay.
3 copies, but I'm gonna tell you, it's a book, and it's pretty hard for the general person to figure out what it says, but, anyway.
Can you talk on the actual payment or just on how it's paid?
What do you mean?
I heard that they're paying 9% on the unpaid, is that correct?
I gotta think about this a minute. That is correct, it's 9.5.
Where do I get that? I want 9.5.
Well, it used to be 6%, but the legislature changed it to prime plus, prime plus something. I don't know what it, I can't remember what it was, because I've been in this for 40 years, it's been 6% for 40 years. But they did change it, and it's 9, I think it's 9.5.
Well, I'm not a banker, but it looks to me like we could borrow the money for a lot less than that and just write them a check for the full amount. Why pay 9% if you can get it for 6 or 7?
And the school could not borrow money unless they have an election.
Well, they're paying money without an election.
Increasing their taxes without.
Yeah.
The judgment is for 3 years. It goes on, and there's a 3-year judgment.
Well, that's a pretty good chunk, 9.5%.
It is.
Well, and
I've been
according to
shopping
OSDN,
around. When
the
you're
plaintiff
our
has
age, you got a
filed
little money to
another
invest.
suit
You're
for
lucky to
non-payment.
find 5.2 right now.
Which one?
According to OSDN, the plaintiff has filed another suit for non-payment.
I thought they already got paid.
They've already been, the way that the judgment worked, they got paid, they settled this like in November of '23. The school made a $1.25 million payment, and then the rest went to judgment. And judgment, it will go on the rolls July 1, and then we have to collect the tax, so the next payment will be July 1 of '25. That's as quick as the county can collect the money and get it to them. And anyway, and the plaintiff has already been paid, because he assigned his interest to First United Bank. I mean, he did one of those J.G. Wentworth deals. Anyway,
So the solution that the excise board presented was, and I might be using the wrong terminology, but redistributing the millage, putting more into the sinking fund, taking some out of the general fund, correct?
The total
And-
millage would stay
and-
the same.
But just redistributing.
Right.
and they basically,
And that's
everybody
how
says
you're not
redistributing it,
transferring
and they kept
money,
saying
you're
transfer
just
this over to, there's no transfer, it's just taking less here to pay this over here. It all equals out, but
And the millage will go up for the sinking fund regardless of whether or not their general
Yes,
fund gets
it-
reduced.
it will go up a
It will-
little bit, 2% or two
No.
mills.
24, it went up from 12.41 to 27.42.
Rest, but of that, 12.82 was the judgment, and 2% was,
Right,
or 2 mills was another, was a,
But the total went up,
yes.
and so that's
So
why
you're
we
saying
need
this
to
board
look.
can block that payment?
Didn't say they blocked the payment, the payment still has to be made.
We can
This is a
reduce
check.
their general fund budget to offset the amount that the sinking fund is gonna go up.
Dang.
You got that?
I hope that explains it all. I mean, I just,
Bigger to pay Paul.
and you guys are willing to, I mean, you can stay as long as you want, but I thought if everybody's here to talk about Kingfisher, I don't really think it's fair to ask or to protest stuff and have the excise board give you a vote, because there still could be more protests. We really need to let that protest run out.
So if you have questions, comments, if you can send them this week, and then we'll compile those.
It would
and
be
then-
best if you can get it in the next couple days, because then we can compile it and get it to the school board to get the answer back before we have to do an approval.
And then we'll try to meet again on the
Either the 25th
25th or
2nd.
October 2nd.
What you got, Jim?
I have a question. We have other school districts that have filed a budget and were to approve those budgets. What was the deadline for filing this budget so that we could approve or disapprove the Kingfisher School District?
Jeannie usually, like, we try to get them by the 15th of September so that we can get them approved, so that we can take them to the state auditor by October 1st. But that does get delayed a lot.
Okay, but September 15th would have allowed time for our local newspaper to publish that information. So the delay is caused by we did not receive the budget from the Kingfisher School District until
Monday.
Monday of this week, which would be September
17.
what?
16.
16. And therefore, that delay did not allow us to review, nor to follow procedures set forth by statute that the budget be published before we approve or disapprove, because it hasn't been public knowledge. All the taxpayers haven't had a chance to read that budget. So if we're looking at what's causing delays, well, we don't, everybody wants to put a blame somewhere. Well, the delay in not being able to take action at this meeting is the Kingfisher Public Schools. In that they did not get that budget delivered in time.
Yeah.
And things don't happen as rapidly as everybody thinks they happen. And well, I would like to introduce a motion, if we need a motion, Madam Chairman, that we follow the procedure set forth by statute in the approval process of the school district's budget, and ultimately filing that budget after that process of protest has been observed to the state, that you file that with the state by that due date.
But we basically need a motion to table it until a special meeting, is what we need. Is a motion to table this action item
Okay.
until we have a special
Okay,
meeting.
well, I'll recall that, so I will make a motion that we table the discussion and approval or disapproval of the Kingfisher Public School System's 2024-25 budget.
What's the date? What's the date you're gonna set?
Can you do
Can you do the
the,
25th? Yeah,
What did you ask me?
September 25th?
That's a Wednesday.
It's on a Wednesday.
That's next
My
It's
Wednesday.
next Wednesday,
My calendar's on the desk and or on the refrigerator.
or October 2nd. Is that what we,
Those are the two dates.
If you excuse me, I'll go check.
okay.
And the process for this is, if the excise board does it, then they take the budgets and certify them at the state auditor. They sit at the state auditor, they must sit there for 15 days for protest. Then once they've done the protest,
25th
that allows the
or
county
October
treasurer
2nd.
to open her tax rolls after that protest.
25th
So that
and
is,
2nd.
that's the reason for trying to get them done as soon as possible.
So just to be clear, you want taxpayers to look at the budget, send questions to Jeannie. Jeannie will compile them, and then we'll send them to the school board, who couldn't even understand an intimate meeting with instructions expressly what they're supposed to be doing. And we're supposed to just be like, we're fine with these answers? Because I don't think that any
Well,
of us
lack
want
of
answers from the
answers.
school board, because that's why we're all here.
Lack of answers.
Yeah. That doesn't seem like a solution.
My
Which I know
problem-
it's not your issue here.
My problem with deciding something without asking the school board for their response is all you're getting is hearsay of this was done or this was done. And I would like it in writing what was actually done. I would like to know, and I'll give you an example. The lawsuit, I know when it was filed. It was filed July the 27th of 21. I want to know what was spent after that date when they knew they had a lawsuit.
Right.
I want to know what was spent, whether you say irresponsibly or whatever you want to call it. I want to know how much money they've spent and what projects they spent it for after that date. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a great
Now,
question.
And I have a hard time advising the excise board to pass or revise a budget unless I know facts about why they're, I wouldn't want to advise somebody to penalize the school unless they can give a reason for the penalizing them.
If they, for example, say, because this question was asked at the school board meeting, why did you spend $8 million on a new turf at a football field? Let's just say, for example. And then, oh, well, that money was already promised or spent. It's semantics, it's word salad, always. And I don't feel like anybody really trusts the answers. But if we have to go through the process, I think we're all expecting those same canned responses.
So Jeannie, when you send this stuff to the school board, will you have a date on there that you would like it to have it back, so they won't go over the 25th?
Wendell, if we had our choices, we would have the DA walk up and ask him point blank. Now, we'll see if he'll do that. But the DA is supposed to be an officer of the county, so he should do what the excise board asked him to do.
There you go.
I like to joke, we also have a police force.
25. Is that one more?
You can't do the
I
25th.
can't do the 20, I can't do the 2nd.
So oh, you can't do the second?
You can do the 25th.
Okay, so that's only a week. That only gives us a week to get this done.
Yes.
That's why I was saying.
If we'll have to go past the 2nd.
So that's why I'm saying it have to be hurried. You guys are gonna have to, you have to write your responses within a couple days so we can get them compiled, to get an answer by next Wednesday.
But that'll give us time to.
But if you've got a complaint right now, you already know what it is, so it shouldn't be hard to reduce it to a question. I don't care how they come, yeah.
No.
No, we can all do the 25th. We just, we're trying to throw
But
out
if
2
that
days.
causes problems, I don't want to.
No, you can do the 25th. Yes, I can too.
Yes, they can.
I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
If I may, for those that don't know me, my name's Jimmy Birkenball. I wouldn't know some of you, because I've never been so thankful. I've left this meeting the last couple of months saying I'm glad I live on the other side of the river. But, and again, I got calls till 11:30 last night, finished corresponding with the last one at midnight, started at 6:30 this morning. Why that happened to me, being the out-of-towner, I don't know. But I'm disappointed that we're not going on and just doing the vote and putting the responsibility where it needs to be back on their table. Don't send us a budget until you resolve how you're gonna pay the debt. Agreed.
Good.
You guys have had the negligence and the responsibility and accountability of taking care of. So I wanted to say that, so hopefully it quiets my phone, because I am definitely, I don't mind getting the phone calls, but I am definitely on the taxpayer's side. Times are tough enough with the economy we have out there. I heard from single mothers, I heard from fathers, I heard from senior farmers, I heard from senior adults last night. I get it. I think we all get it. So I
So
was
what does
glad
that look
whenever
like?
John come up with a solution, an option, however many months that was ago, that he said it's never been done before, but his research and visiting with the proper people and authorities, it can be done, and we all hope that it'll never have to be done again. But there is some accountability that needs to happen at that school.
So what does that look like if y'all did just vote to put it back on them today? What does that look like?
What are you asking, Wendell?
So what does that look like if they voted today to put it back on the school?
Then we're skipping the process to allow taxpayers to protest.
Right.
Right.
I think I get
So-
what John kind of wants to see. He wants to expose where all the spending is happening.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna be hard for the excise board to say we're gonna cut your budget without having a reason to cut their budget.
Yeah.
Well, we have to follow the procedure.
Correct,
I
correct.
mean,
There are laws.
Government is a lot different than individual lives, that we,
And
and we have to follow that procedure. And if we don't follow that procedure or that 15-day notification and time to protest, then the whole issue is, by that one failure, would be a moot point. And just because of trying to rush an issue, we could make a moot issue out of the whole thing and have our mills go to 110.
And I would tell you that the feeling of the excise board up until about a month ago was probably, we'll just keep it neutral. We'll reduce their budget enough to keep it to where the sales tax doesn't affect you. I would tell you that if anything, and let's do it this way, there's a max budget, there's a minimum budget, and that number was here. I would tell you the excise board's probably closer to passing a minimum budget and sending it on to the state auditor and filing a protest themselves. And saying, let the state auditor come in and take a look at everything that's going on.
I agree.
But it's kind of hard to, you can't call for a special investigation unless you're the state senator. It almost is one of those deals, if you get the questions answered, I think you could probably send them in and say, we want this addressed, so. And I guess if they don't answer the questions, then we want that addressed. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
But then we'll make that decision at the meeting on the
Correct.
25th.
That decision should be made on the 25th, next Wednesday.
I have one more question. I understand that the Attorney General said that this redistribution of the from somewhere, I read it, I believe, in the newspaper, that the Attorney General's office had been addressed with the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office said that it was legal to redistribute. And they were wanting a written opinion from the Attorney General.
Bill, that was a deal where Darcy Yeck was contacted, and Darcy contacted the Attorney General's office, and a lawyer in the Attorney General's office responded and said, this is not an official opinion, but in my opinion, you cannot transfer millage from one to the other. And nobody ever said we were going to transfer millage. All they were going to do was ask for less in their general fund. And I shouldn't say this, Bill, but if that is not a possibility, which some people say it's not a possibility, if it's not a possibility, then they need to throw the whole process away. Because if you're just going to give them a certain amount all the time, there is no process. There's no reason to publish a budget. There's no reason to have an excise board at all if this isn't the correct process.
Any other comments?
Does anything happen to the school district as a whole for being in violation of the statute to get the budget here in a timely fashion before this meeting?
They just have to have it here in September. I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
there's
would
really
take-
a
It's
specific
no.
date.
No. If you read the true statutes, I think they had to file their budget by either July 31st or August 31st. And that didn't happen, but it never happened because there are certain things that have to happen for them to get the budget. And it can't, the legislature's put some stipulations in there that are physically unattainable. And I would tell you there is no penalty because it has happened before where a school had a meeting that they had to postpone, or an ambulance district couldn't get their budget approved, and so we waited as late as maybe, and one time I think we had to send one back. They had to do some revision when we got it back in October, so we had to be a little later.
Yeah. All right, you ready to move on?
Did we have the motion on the table, right?
Yeah, there's a motion on it.
Oh,
To table it.
I'll
second. Okay.
Miller,
Yes.
Wittrock,
Yes.
Birkenbaugh.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're gonna do the next meeting September 25th.
Yes. Do 9.
Said 9 o'clock.
Huh?
Said 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
And that gives you time to get everything on the agenda.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions, I can give y'all my email address if you want to email it to me. So, do y'all want that?
Yeah, please.
We can. Anyway, it's kgfcoclerk@pldi.net. Other than that, we'll have Robin write it down over there. So.
Okay.
Do you want the letters mailed or emailed as an attachment?
You can email them. I mean, that'd be fine. kgfcoclerk@pldi.net.
If you didn't know, I hope it brings you just a little bit of peace to mind to know that they have an option. If you just found that out that John had, again, the day I found that out, I was so happy to hear that, because the word in some of the emails that I saw last night was young mothers that are terrified. We get it, we all get it. So I hope them knowing, you guys knowing that there's a way that the school can be responsible and take care of this brings peace to all of you guys, all of us.
Is the option that you guys proposed to them initially, is it still available?
Mhm.
When was that presented to them? What, they went out, what date?
2 months ago?
Well, February is when we started discussing it with them.
I went and talked to I went to talk to the school administration in February and told them, because I only thought it was fair to tell them that the excise board might cut their budget because they would be getting ready to do contracts. And teacher salaries are a large portion of their budget, so you'd like to know that ahead of time. Went again in April, then we met them here in June, and I don't know whether there was any recollection that there was ever a meeting in April or February, so,
Were all the board members present for all these meetings?
no. Board was present in the June meetings.
We had
Three of them.
three of them.
Two of them.
Well,
Well,
Mr. Glover,
Mr. Glover
Two of
and
them.
Brad,
Charles.
Whitrock, and Charles.
Charles.
Two board members and an administrator.
So you had 3 meetings with them and that's all that showed up?
No,
We only actually had one meeting.
I only went and talked to the
okay.
He went and
administration
talked
at
to
2 of
the
the meetings.
administration.
Okay.
And they
I'm
can't
sorry.
have a quorum in a meeting at the same time without it having to be a public meeting. So 2 school board representatives and the superintendent came to the meeting here.
Okay.
All right.
And they can stay if they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
More than
welcome to stay, but we're gonna move back to up
Here, wait a
to.
second.
I have one thing to say.
Hang on just a second, hang on just a second.
I have one thing to say as a member of the excise board. I'm Jim Whitrock. And I'm really impressed with the taxpayers' participation at this meeting. And this is a lesson to all of us that probably on a routine basis, we need to stay more informed and involved with the governmental agencies and taxpayers where we're funding these organizations. We need to stay more involved. And I appreciate everybody's attendance today. And it is an educational experience for all of us. And it's a very difficult job. And it will be handled properly.
Thank you.
And Jeannie, for everybody here, tell them how much the excise board gets paid.
$100 a meeting. Plus their mileage.
Well, we hear every school board meeting how much they get paid,
I
so
was gonna say, my
we
sleep
know.
was worth more than that last night.
Thank you.
Hello, Randy.
Randy.
Oh.